Good morning and welcome to our panelist webinar today. I'm really excited about what we're going to be discussing today because it is, as Tamebay has always been, selling not on your own website. 20 years ago, the only realistic way of selling when it wasn't your own website was on a marketplace, but there are so many new channels opening up nowadays. Things like social media, sites like Facebook and Instagram, messaging services like WhatsApp, Facebook messaging, or TikTok as well. And also search engines are looking to get in on the act. Now, many of these channels have got business solutions already. There are people using these channels. But what we really want to dig into today is, should you be engaging with these channels already? Are they ready for mainstream e-commerce? If not, when are they likely to be ready? And more importantly, what do you need to do to prepare to sell on these channels? Now, I'm delighted to welcome 4 guest speakers to share their experience with us today. We've got Hakan, who is from Frugo, a marketplace, to give a marketplace perspective. Callum from Linworks, who hopefully can shed some light on the nuts and bolts of how to make things work. Andrew from ShipStation, who can hopefully talk to us a little bit about the logistics and what expectations might be and how you actually get an order from a marketplace and print a label. And last but not least, David Brackham from Stuff You Sell, the largest UK trading assistant. From a retailer perspective, someone that's actually selling, let's explore what his opinions are. So would you all like to just introduce yourself and tell our attendees today a little bit about yourself? Let's start at Hakan. Who are you and what do you do on a day-to-day basis at Frugo?
So I'm Håkan Tyr, I'm Chief Revenue Officer at Frugo, which means I'm responsible for seller recruitment, account management, and marketing. I've been in kind of e-commerce SaaS for over 2 decades, so it makes me old. It also makes me a veteran and maybe a bit jaded and cynical, but we'll see.
And moving to you next, Callum.
Sure, thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm Callum. I am the CEO of Linworks. So we are a commerce automation platform that essentially is used by brands and retailers to help them sell their products to their customers all across the internet and to bring together all of their operational back-end processes. So we've got teams across Europe and across North America, and excited to be here today to be a part of this conversation.
And good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. I'm not quite as old and as experienced as Hakan, but I've been in the e-commerce space for about 12 or 13 years. And I work for a company called ShipStation, and I'm responsible for ShipStation in Europe and Asia. And so we work with merchants, brands, manufacturers, retailers, merchants that sell in multiple channels across multiple countries. And we help them, I guess in simple language, figure out the best way of getting their order to the consumer. That's effectively what we do.
And David, good morning.
Morning, Chris. My name is David Bracken. I am a founder and director of Stuff You Sell, a business which helps other people, well, principally on eBay. I'm at least as old as Hakan and probably twice as cynical, having been doing this also for a couple of decades now. We are principally an eBay shop, but we do sell on other platforms. As the retailer here, I'm fascinated to hear what else has to say as well, and hopefully not too cynical about the idea that I've seen probably 20, 30, 40 different marketplaces tell me that they're the next new big thing, that this is the place where I'm going to get all of my sales. And I know where all of my sales come from. All of my sales come from the big places. So you either get them in directly or through the big marketplaces. So I am inertial when it comes to these things. I'm very slow to change.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a fair point for most retailers out there. I mean, let's be honest. Most e-commerce merchants will sell on Amazon, they'll sell on eBay. That's where they'll get the bulk of their orders and obviously their own website. But it's younger consumers are shopping in different places. I know people that are buying and selling on Vinted, on Depop, I know some SMEs who are already engaged on platforms like Facebook and Instagram, and very notably on Instagram, a company called Public Desire, run by Tab and his brothers, who originally were an eBay seller. They run their entire business, and like a multiple tens of £1 million business called Public Desire, purely through Instagram marketing to drive sales to their website. So where do you guys see the really exciting future being? Is it going to be like we've had up until now, that people use social media and messaging for marketing and CRM, customer relationship management? Or is there a future where we are going to be transacting on these channels and seeing the transactions actually take place on social media and messaging platforms? Who'd like to kick off? Andrew, I know you've got some insights to do with Facebook. So do you want to kick off and tell us what's going on there?
I'm going to make myself sound very old now. But when I look at my kids are 12 and 14, and I think the way that they buy and how they buy and where they buy is definitely very different. So I think maybe for the, I'll take Callum out of this, but for the older people on this panel, there is a difference, right? I think the point, Chris, is that how consumers buy, where they buy, and their preferences are changing. I think that's the point, right? And some of those marketplaces are definitely more emergent. My kids buy off of Vinted and Depop. I wouldn't say that's their go-to, but they definitely do, and they sell very actively on those channels. We actually work with Facebook Marketplace, so we power Facebook Marketplace, and it's definitely a very relevant channel for a lot of our merchants. So, I know we're going to come into this later on with some of the other questions, Chris, but I think, without being too philosophical about it, I think people want to sell in as many relevant channels as they can, right? I think that's the opportunity. I think part of that then is really understanding, who the user is or how the consumer is behind those channels, because I think we all think that, it is the same consumer behind those channels. And I think in reality, they are subtly different consumers that sit behind those channels or in those channels. So I think that's the segmentation and the opportunity for brands and manufacturers and retail. That's my sense. I don't know what the rest of the team think, but that's what we see.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. Sorry, Hako. I think it's very interesting also the fact that your 10, 11, 12-year-olds are using different channels now. By the time we get to 2030, they're going to be grown up, they're going to have incomes, and those different channels are going to be the norm. And Hako, I did want to jump to you because Frugal, obviously, your real aim to help merchants is to help them sell internationally. So can you give us a flavour of what's happening, not just in the UK, but in other countries? What makes Frugo different, and where do consumers come to Frugo? Why aren't they using eBay and Amazon like I always have done?
So we're different in that we rely heavily on Google. So we spend a lot of money on Google advertising. The typical user journey starts with a search on Google. So we're not a destination marketplace per se. You can almost think of Google as our buy box, if you will. So a typical journey is someone searches, they see the product they want, they arrive on Frugo, so they arrive with fairly high purchase intent and then transact and leave. So obviously we've worked extensively with Google over the years and kind of seen their plans emerge and change and evolve. A few years back, obviously, they were recruiting sellers for their soon-to-be marketplace, which they've kind of pulled the plug on now. So I worked with them in a different role when they started piloting it in Europe and France, and never really took off. And I think probably the reason for that was they never got the volume of sellers required compared to the number of sellers advertising without being on the marketplace, right? So the marketplace sellers were just drowned out. And even when they reduced their commission fee to 0, it still wasn't worth it for sellers. So they've had to kind of change their, I guess, refocus on being an advertising channel rather than a transactional channel, which is just not what they were set up to be. I think what they're doing now is trying to enable payments that are to integrate with payment systems like, well, Shopify payment, for example, to make it easier to just take care of the transaction without building up the marketplace. And I mean, like with anything else, like when you look to expand internationally, you obviously need to be cognizant of what are the channels where people do product discovery and transaction, which will be different in different markets. Interestingly, one of the few markets where Google is less than 90% of search traffic in terms of the countries where we sell is the US, where Bing actually is big enough to matter. So we spend a fair bit of effort on Bing in the US as well. But yeah, it's just a question of knowing, like, if you can advertise on social media, what are the dominant networks where you are? In the West, it's going to be one of the Facebook properties.
So digging into that just a little deeper, if I may, and if anyone else wants to jump in, please do. What we've seen from Google in the past, and indeed social sites like Facebook, etc., is that retailers have been able to use them as advertising platforms. It might be pay-per-click, it might be free, but it's been primarily an advertising platform. Do you think that's going to continue into the future, or is there going to be a time when, like you mentioned with Google Pay, that they actually want to control the transaction and be able to complete the transaction on the platform, even if in the back end it's powered by a marketplace or powered by a Shopify or a Magento? Do Google actually, and Bing and Facebook, do they actually want to control the transaction?
I think they want to control as much as possible. Obviously, it's in the nature of their business to collect as much data about what you do as possible. I think what Google discovered was that building a marketplace and switching to a retailer model is very hard. And for them, it made more sense to focus on being an advertising-driven business. And I don't see Facebook or any of the Facebook properties becoming retailers, and nor do I see the 5% commission that they charge in the US, where you can actually sell on Instagram. I don't see that becoming relevant to their overall revenue, considering their advertising revenue.
I think, just throw my hat in the ring on that one. I think the challenge that platforms like Facebook or Google are facing is, if you think about Amazon and the consumer buyer journey, Amazon are trying to own that journey top to bottom in the funnel. So they started as a transaction environment. They're now built an advertising business on top of that, at the top of the funnel. And so in one sense, they're beginning to eat some of Google, Facebook's lunch by becoming an advertising business where over 60% of product search is beginning on Amazon. So to counter that, I think Google and Facebook, even if it's not a primary revenue driver, need to look at how they keep customers on platform, or actually probably off Amazon, to defend their ad revenue. And so I think it may be more of a defensive play than the primary driver of revenue for them, but I think it's still front of mind. And to Håkan's point, it's like, ultimately, they want to own as much insight and data across the customer journey and keeping the consumer in their ecosystem. And I think what's really interesting to see is we see more and more marketplaces are now trying to repeat the Amazon model. So increasingly, there are marketplaces that were just transaction environments are introducing a form of paid ads on their own channel. And again, I think it's all about, how do I own the customer top to bottom in the funnel? Because if I can do that, more touch points, better understanding the customer, I can remarket them better, drive more traffic back to my marketplace, and ultimately it's going to attract more merchants to sell on the platform as well. And so that flywheel spins faster.
The only thing I would say is that,
so I think
the only thing I would say, Chris, is that in the overall scheme of e-commerce, it's still quite a nascent market, right? I mean, I think to Callum and Håkan's point, I don't think, Google and Facebook and others are set up necessarily to take that transaction right now, from an engineering perspective. But, they also, it wouldn't surprise me if some point in the future there wasn't some kind of acquisition, because in reality, they're still trying to monetize, all of the traffic and all of the users and eyeballs that they have. So who knows? I think any industry, as it matures, there's some element of consolidation. So it wouldn't surprise me to see some form of acquisition, in the coming years into some of those spaces. But that would just be my gut rather than any specific thing. Just to be clear on that.
And just to add to that, we've not talked much about effort And we make an assumption that it's really easy for Google to come down the value chain to start advertising. They get most of their value from that advertising. They don't need to build the marketplace to keep that value. Absent Callum's defensive point, the building a marketplace is really hard. Building something that has trust built into it, has reputation built into it, has transaction built into it. Even the people who are doing this all the time, you look at what Amazon and eBay do, they don't get it right. They don't get it right most of the time. First time, they have to keep revising it. So to build this stuff is really hard, and an effort works on both sides as well. So as retailers, I know that 90% of my effort and most other retailers' effort is in sourcing stock, right? We do not care about how it gets out the door. We want to source it. If you source it cheap enough, you're probably going to sell it somewhere for enough money. So I've only got 10% of my energy left to worry about the next marketplace. So 90% of that is going to go on Amazon and eBay. There's a tiny little bit of time left to go into these new marketplaces. So whilst we can look at it and say, well, the easy answer is that you do this, 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 and this, the reality is that it's quite hard for anybody to build these things. The marketplaces to build it, the advertisers to turn into marketplaces, and for the retailers to spread across them. So the reality is that the big guys attract most of the attention. So the big brands on the retail side, and then the big marketplaces on the marketplace side, because that's where most of the money is.
I think that's really interesting, because coming from the retailer model is very different. And if you look at the ones that are successfully building a brand on Instagram today, they are brands, and they tend to be what I refer to as the millennial brands. Yeah. I'm picking on Callum now, but as you know, they've invented a avocado peeler and slicer from ecologically sourced bamboo or something like that, and they have 20 SKUs, and they can spend all their advertising money on Instagram to find the right audience. And that, I think, is a much better company profile than if you have 20,000 SKUs and you kind of stack them high and sell them cheap. That's going to be really hard to do on a kind of social channel, I think.
Callum, I want to throw David's point about effort to you, because this is what Limworks does for retailers, is the nuts and bolts and make it possible. But I know a kind of a total e-commerce approach is essential for retailers to compete. They've got to be where the customer is. There's no point taking an Amazon customer and trying to make them buy on eBay or make them buy on your website. If they're buying on Amazon, they want to buy on Amazon. If I'm a 16-year-old and I'm buying on Depop, there's no point trying to get me onto eBay or your own website. And equally, if I'm on eBay, I'm probably a happy eBay customer. I've got account login and credentials. I'm not moving. So what does it mean in practical terms for a retailer like David to take all that effort away and be able to manage multiple platforms and new social platforms and marketplaces as they come along? And what sort of approaches for product inventory, product marketing, managing the business that the extent he wants to do our sourcing, that he wants taken care of? What sort of approaches do we need both now and maybe in 10 years' time?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So I think if you sort of step back to the first principles, what we believe in at Limworks is this idea of the rise of the effortless economy, we're calling it, where the consumer will shop wherever they want on their terms. So to your point, you can't expect the Amazon customer to be on eBay and vice versa, or to show up on your website. There are different types of consumers who are looking for a different type of buying experience around different types of product. And therefore, I think the primary principle for the brand or the retailer is to be thinking, how do I establish the operational capability centrally in my business that means that I can stay connected with my customers wherever they choose to shop? Like Amazon has created this culture of everything centering around the customer. That is the trajectory of the market. And therefore, rather than fight that, it's actually saying, okay, well, how do we embrace it and establish essentially the operational backbone in our organization that helps us win in that context? And so, of course, for every business that's selling goods, you ultimately need to answer the question of how do we manage our inventory? How do we manage our product information, and how do we manage our orders? And so if you're selling on multiple different channels at the same time, that would be why you might use a platform like Limworks. We seek to take all the standardized elements of inventory management across all of your channels, product information management across all of your channels and your order management, and bring that into one central platform. So that basically you're in control of the business. And so I think practically, say in the area of inventory management, it might look like something like stock synchronization. You're selling your product on, say, 5 different channels. You want to make sure that you don't run into stock outs, you don't oversell stock. And so a platform like Limworks in the back end will be updating your stock levels on your different selling channels so that you don't let your customers down and sell something you don't have. And then the same would be true in, say, an area like order management. Same again, you're wanting to sell on multiple channels, capture this total commerce opportunity. And so again, overcoming the complexity of managing orders from all of your different environments, selling channels, assigning them to correct shipping services can be achieved through establishing that core technology platform in the back end in your business.
This is interesting. We've got a question coming from John, which is about internet sales can often erode a brand. For instance, he said when you buy on Amazon, it comes in an Amazon box, it's all branded Amazon. And he's interested in what ideas there are for handling after sales and customer acquisition, driving repeat purchases. So, David, I want to fling this one straight to you and then for everyone else to jump in. Does it matter to you who your customer is and whether they're a repeat customer, or is it just about a product being sold and it doesn't matter if it's a new customer or an existing customer coming back again? If we're selling on marketplaces, if you're on eBay own the customer, and the same with other marketplaces, do you try and capture that customer and remarket to them, or do you just, yeah, I've sold a product, on to the next one?
I think for most retailers, it would be a spectacular act of vanity to believe that they have a significant brand that customers know and believe in, right? So I think for most of us who run anything up to 10 million of sales a year, your customers come to you because they saw a product that they like, not because they like you as a brand, right? That's the first thing to say. We have a lot of vanity around brands, and we believe that we stand for something, but the reality is that we don't penetrate very deeply into customer mindset at this kind of scale. Of course, you'd much rather not pay twice for a customer who comes back. So if you can deflect or divert them into your own cheaper channels, you will try to do that. And the marketplaces will try to stop you doing that because they'd like to clip the ticket a second time. On the whole, we have found that it's not really worth the effort to be deflecting customers versus satisfying the marketplace's demand. So a little bit higher placement on eBay is worth the effort more than deflecting a repeat buyer. We do get repeat buyers, but they want to buy through eBay. And to your point earlier, if they want to buy through eBay, you want them buying a second item rather than thinking about a second item, but not buying it through your own channel. So get the customers where you can and make the effort where you can. Well, I'd love an army of repeat customers who come back again and again, but I know that the fresh customers I get through eBay are worth so much more to me.
And Andrew, I know at ShipStation, you can do things to help capture a customer, like customize the shipping label, put my own logo on the shipping label. David said, if you're a retailer below maybe 10 million, you're not going to get the brand penetration. Would you agree with that, or is it a higher level or a lower level? Obviously, if you're a high street name, if you're like Harvey Nichols, you're going to have that recognition whether you're on a marketplace or your own website. But the independent retailers, is it worth the effort to get this recognition?
I think that's really the point. I think if you talk to the private equity companies, one of the main metrics that they look at is the number of repeat customers that you have, right? So I think it really depends, where you are in your journey, I think, if that makes sense. So, we deal with customers of all sizes. Some of them are very, very focused on repeat purchase because they do own the brand. And to some of Hakan and Callum's point, that's how their business is set up, I think, Chris, if you know what I mean. And so that's how their business process and how they're geared up for repeat purchase. But we all know, right, there's no exact science to it, I think, depending on where you are. And if you're going into different countries, you're trying to address different users, or you're trying to sell different inventory. In reality, you're going to have different tactics of how you sell through those different channels. But, our sense is when we talk to retailers, they're trying to do everything they can. Sorry, brands, manufacturers, and retailers. They are trying to do as much as they can, right, to get repeat purchase, because the cost of acquisition is so high. And also we're so fickle as consumers, right? There is little or no loyalty left, right? So any loyalty that they can engender, then that's a good thing, right? So that's what we see. So we do some stuff with them. We try and make we try and make delivery a point of difference. I guess like some of the things that Callum was touching on, that's our world. So we try and make that experience as frictionless, and also returns. We know that returns has a big impact on conversion rates. So we try and make not only the delivery experience but the returns experience as frictionless, as enjoyable as possible for the consumer.
But I think that's an important point, and Hakan, you kind of touched on it about the brand experience. You mentioned someone that might only have 20 products to market. It's a lot easier to build a brand if you've created 20 products and they're all your marketing, as opposed to someone that's got 1,000 products or 2,000 products or even more, which could be from multiple brands, and you're effectively a middleman retailer without, and your own brand sitting over the top is a lot harder to market in that instance. So I think there might be a difference as well between the very small kind of almost a micro business that's got a specific product set around their brand, and then repeat customers are more likely. But how you scale that into I'm doing 500,000, I'm doing 1 million, I'm doing 5 million, I'm doing 10 million, that's where it becomes tricky. We're not all Coca-Cola and Nike. But moving on, I'd like to look a little bit about how you think that the kind of development of social commerce will play out internationally, both here in the UK and further abroad, because obviously if you go out to China, there's very different social platforms and messaging platforms to the UK. So how do you guys think that this will play out internationally and in the future in the UK?
I don't know, Hakan, you want to start that one off? I think that's you're probably closer to some of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the first point is, what are the platforms, right? I think platforms will evolve towards a model where they can use commerce in some way, or to control the I guess top of the funnel for advertising purposes. I think WeChat in China is in many ways much more advanced than anything here, and they have a more integrated experience and commerce built into it. I mean, this is me being cynical again. I don't see the Facebook platforms going there anytime soon. They've enabled actually transacting on Instagram in the US. I haven't seen any plans for when they're going to roll it out here. And I still think the platforms we have in the Western world they're social. And I think one of the I guess faulty assumptions we make is that we're always consumers, and we're not. Like, when I'm on Instagram, it's a social experience. I don't go there for product discovery, and you may be able to stick an ad in front of me that happens to target me correctly, but that doesn't mean that it's not a commerce channel. That's not why I'm there. I'm not there as a consumer. So that will always be a challenge. I mean, looking at the channels that are out there now, the Facebook properties are certainly dominating across most of the world. So, I mean, for better or worse, it does limit the number of platforms you need to look at. You don't need to necessarily look for the local Instagram in every country. But I think they will migrate towards a model where they get more and more involved in the at least the top of the funnel, but it will be based on an advertising model rather than a commerce one, I think.
That's interesting. And David, as the retailer here, I'd like to throw a sort of two-ended question at you, and then I'd really like Andrew and Callum to jump in. So David, when you're looking at these potential new channels and you're thinking, I haven't got the time and the effort to be able to do it, what sort of technology tools would you like to see, and from a sort of logistics perspective, to be able to just embrace these channels and switch them on, try them, and if they don't work for you, turn them off, but until you hit the one that is working?
Yeah.
What sort of technology and organizational implications would you want to see?
Yeah. And look, in an ideal world, as a retailer, you'd say there's 100 platforms out there. We'll put all of our stuff on 100 platforms and just get on with it. Unfortunately, you just can't do that. The number one thing that stops you doing that is that they all have slightly different rules, right? So it's not a technology question, it is a policy question. So if they have to ship things differently, or if you have to advertise differently, you have to handle customer service differently, then it makes it much harder to do stuff. If you're a Me Too marketplace, so if you're not the biggest or the biggest 2 or 3 markets, the first thing you do is just align your rules to everything else. So if Instagram said, right, we're going to follow the rules of Amazon, and whatever Amazon do, you have to do on it. Brilliant, right? That's kind of, it makes it much easier to deal with. And then the second thing is you'd want the technology to align. So you'd want it to have exactly the same way of presenting titles, exactly the same way of presenting the information within a listing. My first question is, does Limworks handle it, right? We use Callum's product Limworks for our stock management. If you've got a marketplace and it's not on Limworks, I'm just not selling on it because it won't work for me. I can't handle the orders. And I know that the number one thing that pleases customers is shipping it out fast. And I can't do that if I can't get it into my warehouse and I can't get the guys to pick it and pack it because it's on some separate system. They've got to put it on a spreadsheet. Not going to happen. So for me, if you're not the biggest people, and it comes to this effort question, if you're not the biggest people, if you're not the biggest marketplace, then you've got to align your technology and policies to those marketplaces, and then retailers can start experimenting. So we do make the effort. We try and sell on a new marketplace every year, but it's really hard work if the technology's not there.
And Callum and Andrew on the shipping side, Callum on the tech side, can you guys make this easier from the logistics perspective? How can you help retailers with this?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one first.
Yeah,
but yeah, for us, the kind of entire focus of our platform and all of our development is around how do we help our customers get into more channels, have that central control, work with more carriers, to be able to deliver on the customer experience they promise at checkout. And so, that's the direction of travel for our platform, is opening up more opportunities. But to David's point, and I think it's a really good one, is as with any business, if you're running your brand or your retail operation, you want to have a level of focus. Like, our message would be in lots of different channels, but actually be in the ones where your customers are, there's actually a material opportunity for you to drive a return on investment, where you actually are going to have customers. And I think it's the same with the back end and the shipping process as well. You don't necessarily need to offer every single service. You can often capture a lot of the market by providing the right type, a smaller subset that have the biggest impact in the base. So I think it always comes back to, have you got the technology, but do you understand the type of customer that you're trying to serve? And each business, as we've heard on this conversation, looks different. You have the kind of direct-to-consumer brand, might be playing a different game in some different channels, going after a different type of customer, a brand-oriented sell versus a proposition where actually it's about being a solution-oriented sell. You want to be the top product discovered on Amazon. So I think it's very contextual, and I think it's always about remembering how do I understand my customer, serve them really well, and make sure I've got that technology that gives me the flexibility to do that.
I think what David said is right on. I think what I've seen over the years is it's effort and reward. What's the payback? I think if you want to be able to experiment, platforms like Limworks remove some of the friction to allow you to experiment. But it's one of those things in life, just because you can sell on that channel doesn't mean you should, right? If the unit economics don't make sense. We work with loads of retailers in the previous business who, really big businesses, 50 million pound businesses that didn't really know where they were making money at a SKU level, right? So just because you've got top line GMV coming in, if it doesn't make, if you're not making money on it. So I think, to Callum and David's point, there's some great technology out there to allow you to experiment. But I think good old fashioned business principles of, can you make money? Is it attractive to sell on that channel? I think is what we see. So, like Callum, we encourage people to sell on lots of different channels. I think, what we see with some of our retailers is, brands, manufacturers, retailers is trying to help them kind of decide what they want to have as their core competence, right? Sometimes we encourage them to outsource different things, even shipping, fulfillment, returns, right? Because, sometimes they're trying to do so many different things. It's just overwhelming and actually holding the business back. So I think we always sometimes refer to it as like an identity crisis. The sooner you can get through your identity crisis of figuring out what you're good at and what your core competence is, then it allows you to focus on, on really growing the business. Otherwise, some people are just running around, pedaling very fast and not able to David's point, which I think is exactly right. Every minute you're spending just doing manual process and work, in the weeds, right? You're not able to focus on sourcing product or driving new customers. So that's the world that we operate in.
And talking about getting things in place that can take away the manual processes, when you look forward to maybe, let's look at China, where people are going on WeChat and paying on WeChat with Alipay and you make a customer service call and say, hey, I need a product that'll do this, and say, oh, we've got the exact right product, and you buy it there and then. When we get to that in the West, in the UK and the US, what sort of technology investments are we going to need? Do you think that using marketplaces like Frugo, managing it through Limworks and shipping it with ShipStation, is that going to be enough? And are you guys going to develop the solutions for us in time? Or is there other strategic developments and technology that I should be looking at and investing in to prepare for the future?
I'll jump in. Callum will hate this, so you'll have to punch me later. But I just think the world, it's very difficult unless you've got a massive engineering team and a serious amount of money. I think it's very, very difficult to kind of cover all bases. So I think what we see, certainly the world that we live in, is very specialist platforms. I guess David and his peers are trying to build great foundations with platforms like Limworks and then add specialist, platforms or point solutions, right? Because if you look at the data, I think I don't know what it is now, but a year or two ago, it was most e-commerce businesses are running between 15 and 20 point solutions in their e-commerce estate, right? So, even a Shopify or whoever, right, with serious financial muscle and engineering firepower, it's very difficult for them to be amazing at everything. So I think what we see is people are trying to, build that foundation with a partner like Limworks or others in the space, and then add specialist point solutions that are very, very niche and very, very focused, but are, are very exceptional at what they do. That's certainly what our observations have been.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, to be honest. I think the role that Limworks plays in many of our customers' organizations is we are that central hub, but then they're bringing in different point solutions if there's something more niche they're looking to do.
Yeah.
And so we'll be the repeatable bit over and over again around inventory management or some of that product information management or the order management piece. But we'd see others, other point solutions come in. And if it's around, say, serving a certain channel or a customer service tool, for example, I think what I think is really important, again, maybe slightly biased Limworks standpoint, is having that capability that means that when there is a clear opportunity that comes up in your market, that you can move into it quickly, and that it's not this huge overhead. The effort level is reduced. And I think that's the power of something like a platform, such as a Limworks, to help you do that. It's not, you have to retrain all of your staff for a new channel. You can ultimately control it through Limworks. And it's there is work to do, don't get me wrong. It's not just the flick of a button, but the barrier to entry should be much lower to a new marketplace. And I think the other benefit as well of trying to bring control centrally in your business is, how do you pull data from all of the different parts of your operation centrally? Because ultimately, to the point earlier, large retailers or brands not even understanding the profitability around their SKUs. How do you get that data centrally so that you can make better decisions in the future, deploy capital more effectively, and actually understand those basics of where are you actually making money?
I think it's quite.
I want to focus on.
Go on, Chris.
Sorry, Andrew.
I was just going to say, I think, for people listening in, I find it when you go to shows or even when you're listening in to different things, there's a lot of technology out there. I think the good news for us in this space, obviously David and Hakan are a couple of years ahead in terms of their longevity in the market, but there's loads of great technology companies that enter in this space, and there's lots of access to private equity money. So I think the good news for all of us in this space is there's loads of great tech that is able to solve these problems. I think the challenge, obviously, for brands and manufacturers, retailers, is actually to kind of do the research and try and find the right technology partner for them. But there's great partners out there, no question.
And we've only got about 5 minutes left, so I want to talk a little bit about risk, if I may. And and specifically Hakan and David as the guys at the real pointy end as a marketplace and a retailer. We all know the risk of going onto a new marketplace and getting it wrong. If you go onto Amazon and stuff it up, they'll just bin you and close your account and ban you for life. And pretty much the same on eBay and probably on Frugo and other marketplaces as well. But there are other risks involved as well. If I look at a marketplace, the biggest risk is getting shut down and no one misses me. But if I'm selling on a social platform, there's also sort of the reputational risk that you're on a social platform. These guys are going to shout about you if you're good, but also they're going to shout about you if you're bad. So are there any other risks and any strategies that you could suggest for people that are looking at a channel like this, apart from, as you should on a marketplace, get your investment right and do the effort and get it right before you launch? But what sort of risk reward analysis do you guys see?
I mean, the thing I would worry about selling on a social channel is how you are perceived by users. And like me, if I look at myself on Instagram, like 6 months ago, I happened to click on an ad for a watch, and every time I log in now, I get watch ads. And like I bought a watch, give up already. And like there are watch brands I will not buy because they will not leave me alone. So it's about getting that balance right. And when we, especially as technologists, talk about micro targeting and all that exciting stuff, what a user sees is stalking and surveillance capitalism or whatever it is. So it's a very fine balance between being targeted and being creepy. And I think you really need to think about kind of what you're doing in terms of how you're targeting people. And I'm sure as users, as consumers, we see that every day. So that I think that's, especially when you're giving up control of the algorithms to the platform, that's definitely something I would look at closely. And Chris, to your point, when you step into a social channel, you are definitely opening yourself up to making it even easier to get criticized. I mean, people will go on social even if you're not there, but I think you better make sure they're going to provide a good service and a good product if you're going to engage on that platform.
Yeah,
so
I think
I'm slightly worried to compare social with eBay feedback with you, David.
Yeah, I think look, there's already, as you say, there's already feedback on the marketplaces. People will go on to Google reviews and write reviews about you if they don't like your eBay transaction. People are perfectly capable of connecting up businesses to marketplace sellers. So that exists whether you like it or not. As I said, I think as retailers, you want to have, you want to experiment on everything. Of course you do, because additional volume, no effort would be an amazing thing, right? Why can't I have more sales, please? I've got the inventory. But the main risk is about the effort of setting something up, of spending, a week, a month of your time. You don't have many months in a year. Stuff. Q4's ruled out because you're busy doing stuff. You're sourcing for that. When do you have a month to set up a platform? You don't have many of those. So if you can do one a year, you're doing really well. So you pick the one that you think you're going to get the most volume through. Social messaging on the social platforms is just like customer service on all the other platforms. So it would be lovely to have a way that all of those flows into the customer service team in the same way that all the orders flow into the warehouse, right? And I know that there are technologies out there that help manage that, but none of them quite native into all of the platforms. Really necessary to sort of have customer service going through Facebook Messenger at the same time as Twitter, at the same time as Instagram. When there's a perfectly good email, they can email you, on a phone call they can pick up. Not sure. Redirect things into a single center. Be good at, to Andrew's point, be good at one thing and then point people at that one thing.
And just before we close, and I do want to thank you all, Hakan, Callum, Andrew and David, for your time today. But for people listening, if there was just one thing that they should consider doing, what would it be? Would it be to go and embrace one marketplace? Would it be, as David's alluded, go and look at how your CRM is managed, or should we be looking at shipping, or should we be looking at future processes? What's top of your agenda for you, David, and for the other three? What would you recommend for people that should be their number one priority moving forward in the next couple of months?
It's again, for most retailers, the priority is source better inventory. If you have got the best stock and you're the only person who's got it, they're going to come to you. They're going to find you, because if no one else has got it, then no matter what platform, they're going to learn how to buy on eBay in order to get that stock off you. So the retail problem is never about how do you get your stock out there. It's more how do you get your stock in here. If you've got the best stock, then that's the number thing. So you always focus on your offering, get the right stock at the right price. The number and multiplicity of platforms matters, 10% compared to just having one platform that really, really works and has really great inventory on it. Do one thing really well.
Yeah, I just think it's almost unfair to ask the rest of you to add to that, because I think that just about sums it up. The right inventory at the right price, and as we've said multiple times today, pick the platform that has the opportunity for you, the platform where your research suggests that your customers already are, and then get the technology solutions in. And if you're using something like Limworks, there are other plugins that you can use alongside it for the last few bits that you need to complete the jigsaw. So we are out of time. I really want to thank you, Hakan, Callum, Andrew, and David, for your time today.
Pleasure.
We will be making this available to rewatch online very shortly, hopefully later today, if you've missed any. And if you've got any questions, my email address is chris@tamebay.com. Drop me a line, and I'll happily point them at any of our other speakers for you. So thank you for your time today, and goodbye.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.